Welcome back. South African households are struggling to make ends meet as food prices and the general cost of living continues to rise. Consumers have to contend with unemployment, load shedding, and many other factors. Disposable income is shrinking and salaries are not being increased. Now, to talk about this, we are joined by Economist Owen Nkomo. Owen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Perhaps before we start about this particular topic, let's get your reaction on the appointment of the new Finance Minister, Godongwana. We understand that one of the rating agencies has actually welcomed his appointment. So this is good news then for South Africa.
Good afternoon to the viewers. And certainly, yes, the market has taken positively to the appointment of Godongwana as the Minister of Finance to replace former Minister Mboweni, who has left that ministry. And we do think that Mr. Godongwana has got enough pedigree to take care of this department and hopefully to implement some of the policies that has been involved in drafting, particularly for the ANC. Hopefully, he can now implement some of those things that he's been thinking about over the past few years. So certainly the market has taken positively to the appointment of the new minister.
All right, let's get into this now. I mean, these rising costs and its effects. We know that, 18 months of lockdown because of the pandemic has really wreaked havoc in terms of livelihoods for many South Africans. Paint a picture for us, just how bad the situation is.
No, it's terrible, actually. And I think that we unfortunately, when we talk about inflation, we always talk about the inflation that we measure through our economic matrices that currently has us at just about 4.5% per year on inflation. But when you look at household goods that people rely on, for example, food side of things, for example, the energy side of things, it's really a very big concern for people on the street out there, because it's quite exorbitant increases that we are seeing without major without major wage increases because of the bad economic environment we are currently experiencing. I think that it's going to be very difficult for many people to survive this environment. Inflation is quite aggressive, especially for both energy as well as food. So households out there are going to experience a very depreciated, household expenditure.
You know, they say 2021 is about survival. It's no longer survival of the fittest. It's just about survival. Let's talk now about the rising costs of living. How are South Africans supposed to survive?
That's a very big question. I mean, there's survival at the household level where you have to make adjustments to some of your expenses. You need to adjust some of your expenses down, find alternative sources of energy, find alternative sources of food, in terms of pricing, or don't go to an expensive shop at a place where pricing is still relatively affordable. And I think in terms of energy, we have to continue to be very conservative, as Eskom always encourages us to use energy sparingly. I think it's a matter of trying to shop smarter, and that is for those households that can actually afford to continue to shop. But for the vast majority of households that have seen job losses by the breadwinners, it's quite a difficult assumption to make, to say that many South Africans will be okay, with the only intervention, once again, being the government through social grants and interventions from the Department of Social Welfare. So I do hope and think that I will continue to have a long-term view that says we need an economy that actually works. Instead of creating a welfare state, we must create instead an environment that will allow people to create jobs, and we'll have fewer people depending on the government. Because as we can see, when times are difficult like this, pressure on the government is obviously very high to support people that are not employed.
Now, on the one hand, some of us know, what is causing some of, the high prices that we are seeing. But one would appreciate that on basic food, those prices at least should stay the same. Or at least, we should start seeing retailers, meeting ordinary South Africans and citizens, closer in terms of them just being able to afford some of those goods. Talk to me very briefly about just some of, the reasons behind and the attributes behind some of these high prices that we are seeing, and if there is any intervention that can be made outside of, obviously, the basic grant that you've just mentioned?
It's extremely difficult, actually, to expect that corporate South Africa, especially the retail space, is going to take on the shock of rising inflation, and cushion the consumer, especially in an environment where the guys experiencing a drop in sales and an increase in the cost of food and the cost of energy that they use to produce some of the food items that we end up buying. It's a very difficult ask, I think. But we've seen some of these retail shops going out there and putting some sales and promotions and things like that so that people can benefit from that. But again, the biggest challenge that we have is that not many pockets are actually filled with money to go to the retailers and actually buy, which makes it difficult, regardless of how much intervention.
All right, Owen, can you still hear me? We seem to be losing you. Owen, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Apologies.
No problem. Owen, maybe let me ask you this. There's been a lot of examples that have been given in terms of how people can stretch that basic grant income that we are seeing government, extending now to ordinary citizens. And I mean, some of the suggestions was reviving that township economy through the 350 rands. What are some of the practical steps that people can do? I mean, some of the great ones that I've heard is that instead of, communities leaving their basic, places of living and their homes to spend elsewhere, for your big retailers, they should rather spend it local within their communities, help the township economy grow in that vein. Talk to me about just some of the practical things, how people can make that 350 stretch.
Yeah, most certainly, I think that's an intervention worth considering. And I believe that the government, in as far as the government is concerned, where the government can actually maybe provide some incentives, either through tax, either through rebates, they should actually facilitate people that are conducting business in the townships to at least, be subjected to lower costs compared to the people that are operating from the big cities. And I think some interventions that people can consider have been suggested in the past. For example, ride sharing has been suggested, and we've had suggestions to the effect that people must try and buy things in bulk together. And I think that, as I've said earlier, looking for alternative places where to buy your food, at lower prices will certainly work. And I believe that that corporate South Africa as well should also intervene in the sense that we need to adapt to the fact that not everyone really needs to be in the office. We can have people working from home as long as we've got, affordable data. So therefore, that is talking to the telcos industry to consider creating packages that will accommodate people working from home in terms of data. Mm-hmm. And a whole lot of other interventions that I believe can result in low cost for people operating businesses out of townships. That needs to be the prerogative of the government going forward. And we need to start thinking about an economy that is responsive to the current environment or the current challenges that we are going through, so that in future, if this happens, people can actually find it easy to operate from their homes. And secondly, let us see the government putting more budgets, and actually those budgets going to the businesses in the townships, because it's usually all lip service. We never get to account and get to understand how many of those businesses have been given government support. So we do hope for a change in direction going forward from the new Minister of Small Businesses, for example.
Now, there are other people who are also pushed to the brink in terms of just affordability and just basic living. And they can't or they don't qualify to receive this basic grant that is being afforded by government. And then obviously we are hearing that there is a lot of support for this partial withdrawal of pension funds. Talk to me about what your thoughts are in terms of that for those South Africans that don't qualify for the grant but are really struggling and barely surviving, and really need to look into tapping into their pension funds? Owen, please can you open your mic when you answer that question again?
All right, I apologize. I'm sure you can hear me now.
Perfect.
So I think giving people access to their pension funds might be a good idea at face value, but I think it's the mechanisms that will be followed by Treasury, and the government authorities, in terms of saying you can get access to X amount, you can get access to this amount for a certain period of time. Maybe you can get either a lump sum or you can get, an annuity sort of income. If you've been employed for several years and you save R1 million or 300,000, let's not give people access to the one full day lump sum. Maybe an idea would be to say, let's give you an equivalent of the salary, so that should the economy start to tick back again post-COVID, you still have a big chunk of your pension saved. Otherwise people are just going to go and withdraw all of that money and they'll plug it into their debts. Some of them that are smart will do that, but some of the people that are not will take that money and go and spend it buying groceries, all of it, buying disposable stuff, which is not going to help them in the long run. And I think that the beneficiaries of that are going to be the retailers and the banking sector. But once again, if your credit record gets sorted out, the financial institutions will rush to sell you some more debt. And then what happens then? Are we going to allow the people to get access to these funds again? I think we need to thoroughly think about it. We need to find the right balance. People must get access to their money, but I don't think they need to get 100% of the suggested 1/3, but just enough to keep them going as if it were a replacement of a salary. That's how I would approach it.
Fantastic. Owen, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to have you on and hearing your analysis. That's Economist Owen Nkomo there for us.